Alrighty. Sweet. The format for this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcements, a coffee and snack break, and our main speaker. Our first speaker for tonight is Casey.
Hi, Casey Alcoholic. Oh, I was so nervous to come up here and share today. I don't know if you've ever had to do this and you run it through your head for a couple days. I go, this is what I'm going to say. So I've probably pitched like 20 times. And then get here and then find out that Bill C. is like the speaker after this. I'm like, oh, God. God help me. So don't leave because you're about to hear some amazing stuff after me. No pressure at all. Again, I'm Casey. I'm an alcoholic. Grateful to be sober today. Grateful to be in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you, Chris, for asking me to come and give a 10-minute pitch. I don't like doing this, but it's always an honor and privilege that someone asks you that thinks that you can actually do this. And I can. I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version of what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Let's start with what it was like. I am an alcoholic through and through. I love the effects produced by drugs and alcohol. When I was younger, it was mostly alcohol. Drugs didn't come until a lot later. And from the gate, have an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind. And I love to go into the refrigerator and get Mom's box wine. During the holidays, she made this drink called Wassail, and I was the one that kept sneaking into the kitchen, drinking the Wassail. And NyQuil, man, it was great being sick. And I didn't want that, there's like a suggested measurement on the cup of NyQuil, and I'm just, Mom, just load it up. And that was how I my drinking career started. And like I said, drugs came a lot later. And, and another thing that came with the drugs and the alcohol were consequences. And, and by the time I was a senior in high school, life was, it was like, I felt like life was crumbling around me, and I didn't have the life manual. And it was utter chaos. And I could manage the chaos as long as I had that occasional access to alcohol, which was frequently. And, every once in a while, I could throw some drugs on top of that. And then, my first introduction to a 12-step program was when I was in my late teens. I had a family member that was sticking needles in her arm, and I went to a sister program to support her, and they went around the room to introduce, everyone goes around the room and introduce themselves, and it landed on me, and I said, my name is Casey, and I'm an addict. And I smoked pot every day, so I thought I qualified, and I truly did. I did qualify. But I was dating a guy that was still using and abusing, and as I stayed sober for those 2 weeks, I could see him drifting away because I wasn't the fun girl anymore. And I came to those meetings and I heard the differences. Your stories were outrageous, and my life did not look like your stories. And I said, this wasn't for me. So I had to go out and continue my controlled drinking, and I did for a lot of years. Picked up some husbands along the way and had a baby along the way, and life was still unmanageable, and I tried to control and manage it with drugs and alcohol, and I could manage it as long as I had access to it until things became unmanageable. I know today that I do have that allergy, and I have a progressive illness. It doesn't matter when it starts. It moves. It boogies with me, and boogie it did. And the boogeyman showed up. And say 2003, I came back into the rooms, another sister program again, but this time I wasn't coming to support a family member that was putting needles in their arm. I was going for myself because I was spinning a glass pipe. And I came in, I was 98 pounds, I was homeless, I had somebody else's driver's license in my pocket. If I could, I just did incredibly demoralizing things. And so I came crawling into the sister program. But I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I know, drugs bad, alcohol good. And so I didn't want to come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I just wanted to get the monkey off my back. And I wanted to have a relationship with the family that screws into their windows so that I wouldn't break into their house. And I wanted to have a relationship with that kid again that wrote me letters that said that we were done. And I came into the program for a while, and I got a sponsor, and I did some work, but it wasn't enough to keep me sober. And I kept going in and out of the program. And I had some self-knowledge, but self-knowledge, we know, avails us nothing. And I met him on AA campus, and I held him hostage, and I kept going in and out of the program, and I made him keep my secret, and it was really rough on him because he was getting close to getting loaded himself. And the last time I went out, I tried to come back into the house, and he said, no, it's not going to work this time. You need to pack your shit, and you need to get out. And so I did. I left. And this time I had to do it for myself. And, I was going to do this. And I didn't, but we did. And I got a sponsor that started me on the 10th step, and it was unconventional. And but I had already been through the 12 steps, so whatever reason, this new sponsor was trying to get me to see my selfishness. And it took a lot of work, and I worked the 10th step for a lot of days, and I finally was able to see the real selfishness, that I'm just selfish through and through, and every choice that I made was based on myself, and I was ready then to get to some other work. And I started working 1, 2, and 3. 3 is a real challenge for me. I know that there's a power greater than myself, but I just don't want to turn it over because I think I got this, I can handle this. And so 3's always been a challenge for me. But I worked 1, 2, and 3, and then we started to do a mini 4-step. I had done an extensive one, but going in and out, you kind of pick up some resentments. My 5th step with this sponsor took about a month. We dug really deep, and I finally told the secret. And so on my sobriety date is August 18th, 2010. Just like in a handful of days, I'll have 13 years. And for those of you who have seen me come in and out of this program, I'm a miracle. I'm a miracle today. So I started doing the work. 1, 2, 3, I did 4 and 5, 6 and 7 is something that I do every day. And then 8 and 9, boy, that was not fun. Matter of fact, just recently I had to do a couple more 9s, and because sober, I created some damage, and that's humiliating, but it's I just made some great spiritual progress because of it. And now I'm back on maintenance, 10, 11, and 12. Going through this pretty fast. How much time do I have? 2 minutes. Awesome. Let's get sober. What it's like today. So I told you I came in here 98 pounds dripping wet. Today, I have a rich, full life, and it's only because of direct result of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. None of this would be possible, and now I'm just going to tip my hat. And not because I'm tipping my hat because of stuff I've done. Everything that I'm tipping my hat to is as a direct result of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I thank all of you for the life that I have today. In my recovery this time, I have completed college. I got my teaching credential. I'm in my 11th year of teaching. 1 year I was teacher of the year. I have had like several years of perfect attendance. I got married to that guy that kicked me out of the house. We bought a house. I have a driver's license that belongs to me. I have animals that I take care of. I have a rich, full relationship with my parents and that child that said they didn't want to have anything to do with me. And in the midst of that, I want you to also know that you can find peace, because life's still life's, right? You know, it's just not all unicorn and ice cream. Life's. Like, for instance, recently, I was diagnosed with diverticulitis. I'm sure like half of the room in here has it. It's not fun, but it's okay, man, because I have insurance today, because I have a job, and I can go to the doctor and take care of it, and I can eat properly. I asked my husband ahead of time if it's okay for me to talk about it, but we've had a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, MS, in our family. And you know what? It fucking sucks. But it's life, and lives, and we know that everything's going to be okay today. I don't know what else to say. I know that there's some people in the back that are here with like sober livings and stuff like that. I am a product of sober living, 18 months. And that's where I have like my sisterhood. My best friends came from the sisterhood of my sober living. I learned how to clean a house in sober living. I learned how to make my bed in sober living. Alcoholics Anonymous, I thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous. I thank Alcoholics Anonymous for my God. And I'm a miracle. That's all for me. The end.
All right. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, our main speaker will share his experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Bill C.
Hey everybody, I'm Bill. I'm an alcoholic. So we learned something already tonight from our 10-minute speaker, who was great. Drugs bad, alcohol good. Well, there are certain spiritual truths, aren't there? I mean, there are certain spiritual truths, and one of them, here's another one, a really good one. Alcohol plus money equals cocaine. Yeah? That's why God gave us cocaine, so we could drink more. Right? That's not an outside issue, it's an inside one. I was at the very first meeting of this meeting. That's because I'm old. And the very first speaker, I was inside, I think I was less than a year. I think this started in 85 or 86, didn't it? This meeting, 86? And I had less than a year, and I was sitting in the front row, and the very first speaker was a guy named Cliff Roach. Some of you older people would know Cliff. He's passed away now. I thought I was going to laugh myself sick. And I looked at that, and I go, yeah, I want to do that, whatever that is. And here I am today. I mean, Cliff later became a really dear friend and somebody, a real mentor of mine. Dave Barge has been a real mentor of mine. We're losing our buddy, and what a legacy he's left. I mean, when I was new in sobriety, I was just full of piss and vinegar. I thought I knew a lot of stuff, and I'm very loud and very aggressive and shooting my mouth off about stuff I really didn't know that much about, but that's my style. And I wrote a nasty letter to the Roundup because they were doing things incorrectly. And Dave took me out and got a cup of coffee with me and said, Bill, instead of throwing rocks, why don't you come and join us? If you want to change things, come and join us. Don't stand out and throw rocks. And I said, oh, destroy from within? He goes, no, Bill. Build. And he sucked me into his vortex. He's one of the guys that I've grown up with here in AA that liked my enthusiasm and didn't try to crush my spirit. He just tried to guide me. I had a couple of conversations with Barge and other men like him where you walk away from the conversation and after a while you realize he told me I was stupid and I didn't even notice it. I had to think about it for a while, you know. I mean, it was like that, but it was always loving and kind and trying to guide, trying to aim the rocket, you know, instead of crush the spirit. I love that man. And I got to interview him on Interview for an Alcoholic, and if anybody would like a recording of that, I got it. It was really good. And I did a really good job because I shut up and let him talk, you know, and I was very happy to be able to do that. So, I was a surfer and a biker and a tough guy. And I rarely went to the beach. My motorcycle rarely ran. And I was afraid to fight. But I looked really good. I had a chrome Nazi helmet for a hat and a primary chain for a belt and black greasy Levi's and big black boots with chains around them. I've got tattoos all over me, but I had a clip-on earring because I didn't want to hurt myself. Andy made me tell that. My biker nickname was Horny. I have it tattooed here on my arm, and it's misspelled. It's Horney, Hornay, with an exclamation mark for emphasis. Now, that's pretty much all you need to know about me, isn't it? By the time I was 17, I was a bad drunk in high school. I had a big jacket and a slouch and a sneer and a foul mouth and a bad attitude, and I carried a gun. And I'm from the mean streets of Palos Verdes. There's no gangs in Palos Verdes. Nobody was looking for me. I was a gang of one. And but I thought being a gangster, being a tough guy was cool. I want to be that, you know. I want to be a biker. I want to be an outlaw. I want to be a gunslinger. You know, I want to be a bad guy. And that's a career path. And, I was at Bass Lake on the 4th of July, I think 65 or 66, and the Hells Angels rode in there, and I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. And I met her, and we went up to Oregon to grow our own, and got married, had a couple of kids, and I was running with an outlaw motorcycle gang and sticking needles in my arm and drinking like a fish, not coming home to that family, and they were on welfare, and it was awful. I ended up in a mental institution. I ended up in the Oregon State Mental Institution in Salem. It's a mental institution that Ken Kesey worked on when he wrote Cuckoo's Nest. They filmed that movie on the ward I was on. The next time you see that, think of me. You know? I'm not bragging, it's just all I got. This is the highlight of the Drunkalogue, you know. Some people went to college. You know, I couldn't find the place. You know, I was busy. And, you know, I think the whole drinking thing, all of us tell the story, all of us, different approaches, but we all talk about how we didn't feel part of when we were young. We felt separate and weird and strange. And some of us will use the term that we had alcoholic thinking long before we ever drank, as if there is such a thing. And we think that we're that unique. You know, we have alcoholic thinking. Never tell an alcoholic what to do. They don't like to be told what to do. If you tell us what to do, we'll just do the opposite. Never tell an alcoholic what to do. Now, if you're 14 or 15, that can be appropriate, maybe even cute. When you're 40, it's just stupid, right? That's emotional immaturity. It's not alcoholism. All kids feel separate. All kids feel different. The ego presents itself at about 2.5 years old, right? Prior to that, the kid doesn't know subject-object. It's connected. It's parasitic. It can't survive without us. And about 2.5, the ego presents itself, and it realizes when I cry, they come, you know, and then it begins to manipulate the situation. The ego is what separates us. All of us, everybody in here, I'm sure, and anywhere in the world at some time in elementary school looked across the room and thought, if I looked more like Joey, I'd be cooler. If I was taller, if I was skinny, if I had blonde hair, dark hair, if I had curly hair, straight hair. We all think we should be different than we are. That's ego creating separation, subject-object, right? Everybody feels that way. And then you and I, alcoholism presents itself when we drink. All of a sudden, the separation goes away. And we tell that story, you know, when it hits the stomach and comes up, and all of a sudden I could talk to the girls and I was cool. And that's alcoholism. We get a bigger bang out of it than other people get too. It isn't that we just can't stop drinking. We also get a bigger bang out of it. We have a spiritual awakening. You know, Jung talked about this, you know, that search, spiritus contra spiritum, using spirits to find spirit, the unconscious search for God, trying to feel connected, trying to feel unity, to not be separate anymore. That happens for us. That happens. When I started doing that at 14 or 15, many of you were more advanced and started at 8 or 9, or some of us were a little slower, 18, 19, but right in the middle when all the lessons are being handed out, we medicate the shit out of ourselves, right? And I missed all the lessons. And when I got here at 37 years old, I had the emotional development of a rather disturbed 16-year-old, right? That's what I want. And the rest of the journey is us growing up here, and the chances of us doing that and looking good are really slim, right? And the only way you and I can grow up is through experience. Now that we're not medicated, we're going to have a series of experiences to cause us to grow up. So I sit in a coffee shop with Dave Barge, and he tells me, no, Bill, build, don't destroy. That was an experience. I remembered, and I believed him when he said that to me. This disturbed little kid trying to feel part of, trying to make a name for myself in an anonymous organization. Right? I'm going to be here. I'm going to run it. Right? You know. And I think I grew up a little bit over the years, hopefully. So I think the whole idea behind the drinking thing, when I feel this sense of separation, was to have a couple of pops and get out of the house and go have some fun. Wasn't that the idea? Wasn't that the original idea? I ended up naked in my living room watching religious television, taking notes. I'm having sex, menage a uno. You know, what the hell happened to the party? You know? If there was still a party out there, we'd still all be there, wouldn't we? Isn't it interesting how we all end up alone? Most of us end up alone. And I'm a people guy. I'm an extrovert, man. I'm a bar drinker. I'm out there, and I ended up naked in my living room watching religious. What the hell happened to the party? You know? When I got here, I was 37 years old. I was on my second marriage and a second set of 2 kids. My daughter was 3 years old, and my son was 4 months old. And one night, I was up all night. And I lived in the house with these people. And I had no emotional connection to another living human being. And I don't know that. The alcoholic life seems like the only normal one. I don't know that I'm not connected. And you're in my way. You're right there. I can see you. How do I know I'm not? Because I've never been connected. I've never, ever been connected. I'm not capable of intimacy. You know, I'm not capable of it. I don't know anything about it. And I don't know any of that. This is all looking back, hindsight. I was up all night, and my little daughter got up and was happy to see that Daddy was up, and she crawled up in my lap, and it just broke my heart. Moments of clarity. I'm not a father. I'm not a husband. I'm not a son. I'm a nothing. And I always knew I was nothing. And it had come to that. And so like any good gangster, I called my mom. And this is a woman that had been in Al-Anon for 30 years by this time. They are organized, prepared, and focused, right? And she got there inside of a half an hour before I took the nap, right? And changed my mind. And she took me to a place out in Costa Mesa called Starting Point, and I spent 35 days in that place. While I was in there, they made me wear a sign around my neck. I had to make the sign. We made it in crafts. A little rectangular piece of cardboard with a string that went through it, and it said, "I am not a counselor." Because evidently there was some confusion about that. And then after 35 days, they let me out. They just let us out, don't they? Like we're okay now. You know, go forth, multiply. You know, and where do we end up? Here, the world's aftercare program, Alcoholics Anonymous. When all the insurance money runs out, when they're all done gestalting and rolfing us, and we end up here, and we are the counselors here, aren't we? It's like the inmates are running the asylum. You know, I've been married 3 times. I've been to a lockdown mental institution twice, and been to a lot of therapy over the years. And people ask me for relationship advice. I give it to them. I figure, hell, you can't hurt them. They're here in AA, you know. And, oh, dear. 2 things happened to me when I walked into AA after they let me out of there. They let me out on a Friday, and I went to the Hermosa Beach Alano Club Friday night. It was the Gong Show. Rocky Hudson was the secretary. He clearly was president of AA, as far as I was concerned, you know. And I walked in that room, I walked up, I got there right on time. Why would you be early? It's April of '85, it's a beautiful summer day, and the place is packed. Why would an AA meeting be packed at the beach on a Friday night? And these people were dressed up trying to hook up, man. This was a party. The nicknames are flying around. Rocky's telling weird jokes. Rocky's 20 questions. Is the economy recovering faster than you? And people would one guy got up at the podium, they hooted at him so much he just sat back down. He clearly was very loved, you know, because we were loving each other. And I stood in the back of the room and I heard the music. I got it right away. I just knew, I started laughing. We laugh at the tragedies and we cry at the successes here. Isn't that true about us? You know? One of the reasons we laugh at what it used to be like when we sit up here and tell stories is because it's not like that anymore. That's what makes it funny, because it's not like that. Because when it's like that, it's not funny. Alcoholism isn't funny. It's not cute, right? It's not a movie. But I got the joke, and I started laughing. And I remember clearly driving home that night saying to myself, this may not be so bad. 38 years later, I've not lost my enthusiasm for it. I'm an old hippie from the 60s. Weird has always attracted me. And I find you all, to this day, deliciously strange. You know, I just enjoy it. I love the energy of it. I've always been able to feel it. And I feel very fortunate that I haven't lost that enthusiasm. I was with a guy just before the pandemic, and he told me he almost had 30 years, and he had some pain medication. He had a surgery, and he went out. At the time, he was driving me around and speaking somewhere, and he had a commitment in AA. He was 2 years sober again. I came back to ALA, and I asked Jay, I said, how come we're still here, you and I? And he didn't say it's because we worked the steps the right way or we got the best home group and, you know, whatever it is, you know. He said, we've never lost our enthusiasm for it, you and I. What a gift, you know. The second thing that happened is after a couple of weeks banging around the meetings, I asked this guy to help me, and he actually did, which doesn't always happen, you know. And the first thing he said to me, this Jay guy, many of you know him, he's still weird. He's in Sedona now with the rest of the ufologists and the weirdos and the energy centers, and he's taken me some weird places. You know, really expanded my life. He said to me, go home and read the doctor's opinion, make notes in the margin of what you agree with and what you don't. Be at my house Thursday at 5 o'clock and we'll discuss it. And what's the bottom? We talk about hitting bottom a lot around here. Even in sobriety, we hit bottoms. I don't know if you have. I've hit a few. They talk about the second surrender, but they don't tell you about the third one, the fourth one, and the fifth one. It seems to continue that way. But I think what the bottom is the collapse of the alibi system, isn't it? We stop the blaming somehow, so that there's a door opens up and we can listen, but it closes pretty quickly, you know. The ego is strong. You know, it comes back, but it gets exhausted. I think some of us just fall over from the sheer exhaustion of the lifestyle. And the window opens up. So I just did what he told me, which is not my MO. I went home and I read my little assignment and I made a little note and I showed up at this stranger's house. I don't think I knew his last name. And he let me in and he sat me down in the living room and he did a very intimate thing with me. He didn't trust me that I'd read it and he had me sit there and read it to him out loud. And he told me a couple of things. It was either on that occasion or each week I went back and we read another chapter in the book essentially. And I would ask questions and make comments and argue about stuff, and he would give me airtime. And one of the things he told me that I've never forgotten, he says, my job as your sponsor is to guide you through the process of the 12 steps, to take you through this process, that you might have some kind of spiritual awakening, and maybe you'll never drink again for the rest of your life, because that happens here. That happens here in AA. And I would be happy to sit here and listen to you tell me what you think your problems are, so that you will not share about them in the meetings. The meetings are for recovery from alcoholism, not about how your day went. And I told him, down there at the Ilano Club, they are breaking that rule right and left. Should we go tell them? Right? I didn't know, you know. I mean, I was doing it. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? It's group therapy, right? I had a lot of group therapy, so, you know, whenever they would say, does anybody want to sit on the hot seat? I go, yeah, hell yeah, I'll do it. It's all about me, you know. And he said, no, AA is a safe place. You can do anything you want there. You know, they can't kick you out. I'm just describing to you my AA. I believe that today. I think that's true. But I also believe that there's a lot of different doorways into Alcoholics Anonymous, isn't there? There's a really good reason why all meetings are autonomous. They can pretty much do whatever they want. I think I know what you need, but I don't really, do I? I don't know what you need. I can tell you what happened to me and what I need, but I don't know what you need. Maybe you need to walk into a meeting where nobody's rushing you because you're introverted, you're just quiet, and you can sit and people that may do that for 2 or 3 years and then go look for something more later when you get settled in. Me, I walked into the Gong Show and I went, oh, hell yes. You know, it's like, this is like the bar I just left, you know. And it made sense to me. It was funny to me. It was, you know, it was interesting to me. But I don't know what you need. That's why meetings are autonomous. There's a reason for that. There's only one program in Alcoholics Anonymous. This is an opinion, but I really like it. There's only one program. There isn't a different program for every person in AA. We all know what it is, even if we're not doing it. It's the 12 steps. But each one of us has our own experience with it. That's what makes it unique. We each have our own experience with it. I went there each week and I read, like going to class. We read another chapter in the book and he talked to me about stuff. He took me on field trips. Back in the mid-'80s, there was still a lot of 12-step calls going on. So we would go on 12-step calls, you know, off into the middle of the night down into Wilmington, you know. He called me up one night. It was really weird. He's really weird. He said, Jesus is drunk in Wilmington and he needs us. Now, I've taken a lot of acid, and no one ever said anything like that to me. You know, and we went down and picked up Jesus and brought him to the Ilano Club, you know. So the years have gone by. Here's what I think's going on, for whatever it's worth. It says in our 10th step that our first speaker talked about, that the only thing that's going to save us, keep us sober, give us a life with some purpose, some direction, maybe some intimacy in our relationships, that kind of thing. The only thing that's going to do that for us is the maintenance of our spiritual condition. It also says in that same paragraph that we're going to rest on these things called laurels, and we shouldn't do that. What's a laurel? A laurel is a past achievement. Well, when I got to AA, I had no spiritual condition, and I certainly had no past achievements. So if I'm going to accomplish this thing, I need to get a spiritual condition so I can get some laurels so I can rest on them and find out why that's not a good idea. Okay? So here's our goal. We need to develop some kind of spiritual condition. And what's that look like? Well, there's a lot of people in AA that are mechanics that can tell you about how to work the steps, and it's very informative. There's detail you can go to, but the very first thing this guy wanted to know from me is whether I thought that I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. Now, for me, that was an easy answer because I was quite sick. Physically, I was very ill. As it turns out, I was a lot more ill than I knew I was. I had cirrhosis and I had hepatitis C, and they didn't call it that then. They just called it non-A, non-B, didn't think it was that bad. Well, 6 years ago, February, I had a liver transplant at 30-some years sober. It almost killed me in sobriety. And so I was really sick then, and I felt that. I felt very sick. I felt very ill. So I could cop to being powerless over drugs and alcohol. I was done. The obsession got lifted right away, and I was done, and I felt done. And I was just scared that I was going to get loaded again, but I really didn't want to. I was tired. 38 years later, I think it's everything, don't you? There's people here been sober a long time. Have you discovered anything you actually have some power over? They didn't tell us that. They just kept it to drugs and alcohol because they didn't want us to run screaming down the street. As it turns out, it's everything, right? Everything. I don't require any power. I don't need any power. I am not unfolding the reality it's not emanating from me. It just seems to be happening all on its own, and I'm watching if I'm paying attention. Take advantage of what's presented. I talk to you incessantly about how if you were a little bit different, the two of us would be a hell of a lot happier. And you absolutely insist upon living your own life, and it pisses me off at my core. Right? You're my problem. You're responsible for how I feel and how I behave. If you didn't behave the way you behaved, I wouldn't need to straighten you out. The reason I'm yelling at you is because of what you did. How's that working out for you? Huh? It's like, do you suppose I was having trouble with personal relationships? Yes, all of them, right? So I'm powerless over you. I've lost complete control over the geopolitical situation in the world. Look at it. It doesn't matter what side you're on. It's just nuts. 3 years ago, I turned off the news because I was not emotionally stable enough to deal with it. And no one has ever called me from Washington and asked me what I thought should be happening. I am utterly powerless over all of that stuff. It's not where I live. I don't live there. And it takes up an immense amount of consciousness. It separates me from people. And that's not what I'm looking for. And so I shut it off. I've had some slips, though. I don't have a whole lot of time right now, but I'm doing my best. But I'm powerless over everything. If I can grasp that, just the drugs and alcohol part, the second step then becomes operational. I need to be restored to sanity. I need to find some power. I need to get close to it. I need to do something about that. Some people here will tell you that you have to believe in God to do this thing. No, you don't. That's clearly not true. All you need to know about God is it's not you. And I had trouble with that. Bill Wilson wrote a lot about the second step, and what he writes about is being open-minded. And if I look back at my life, my acid test is, how's it working for you? Not well, not good. and you're talking to me, and I'm not drinking now, so I'm just going to pay attention. And my sponsor would say things, I would argue with him about God, and he would say, Bill, I don't believe in the God that you don't believe in either. And that's confusing, right? Because, all those of us that have trouble with God, whether we believe in it or not, we have trouble. What we basically do is we create a God and then don't believe in it, right? Like you ask them, I don't believe in God. Which one don't you believe in? Because there's a bunch of them. It's like there's a bunch of concepts. But here in Alcoholics Anonymous, the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous is we experience it here. It comes and visits us. And you can label it with whatever makes you feel comfortable. But it's an experience, isn't it? March the 27th, 1985, something touched me. I never asked for it. What else do I need to know about it? At 6 months sober, I did a 5th step with that sponsor. I went home. He told me to go home, and when I stick the key in the door, think about the guy that's walking through that door today compared to the guy that walked through it 6 months ago. And I did that. And I stood there and I thought about it, and I realized, my God, it's going to be like this now. The old life, whatever that was, is over. Isn't that remarkable? We all have that story, every one of us. We all have that story. And there's that moment of realization where you realize everything's changed now. Now, some years ago, my friend Wayne here and I were with this Indian guru guy. I was very impressed to be with this guy. He was quite an incredible man. And he gave a talk to some people. We went back in this little side room after the talk, and the three of us were sitting there, and I'm babbling away like I do. And he looked at me, and he started laughing at me. I said, what are you laughing at? He goes, oh, I love you alcoholics and drug addicts. I go, why is that? He goes, the rest of them out there are trying to get awakened. You're just trying to figure out what the hell happened. Isn't that true about us? Isn't that the rest of the journey, trying to get close to what the hell happened? I don't know about you. I never asked for this to happen. It just happened to me. Something touched me and it happened. What else do I need to know? I've had a life-changing, it changed the course of my life, and all the people around me changed the course of their life. Then the 3rd step comes along. The 3rd step's interesting. It says that I'm going to make a decision to turn my life and will over to what already has it anyway. I think it was nice of them to lead me to believe that I actually have some say in the matter. Well, I've been withholding myself from the totality of all things long enough. I'm going to acquiesce now and allow you to take me. Thank you very much. Where's my trophy? And we have these long, windy discussions about the difference between my will and God's will, as if that's possible. I mean, isn't that the height of ego? My little ego loves the idea of us having a battle of wills with the power that drives the entire universe, right? And we also discuss, what is God's will? It's because it's a mystery, isn't it? God's will, isn't it a mystery? God's will is what's happening right now. What else could it possibly be? And I have trouble with what's happening right now. I'm looking for an alternative, and there is none. The source of all the suffering in my life. My inability to accept what's going on around me. We talk a lot about acceptance here. The acceptance to me, if I really get how powerless I am, acceptance just happens. It's a power trip. I'm looking for alternatives, I want something different, and there's nothing there. This is it. This is it right here, right now. What life and will is the 3rd step talking about? It's the inventory, isn't it? The end result of living a life with seeming power, resentment, fear, and broken sexual relationships. That's what I bring to you. I have no self-esteem. I feel like a piece of shit, and everybody around me, it's their fault. I'm a mess. And I write this stuff down and I share it with you. The 2nd pillar of spiritual condition is I have to stop blaming other people and institutions for my problems. High school is over. It's time for little Bill to take responsibility for his life and stop the blaming. And that's going to take a while because that's part of who I am. Part of who I am is who I hate and why I'm here. That's a large part of my personality. In here, sometimes we talk about the victim complex, a very real thing. But I have to try to stop now. And if you surround yourself with some relatively healthy people in AA, not necessarily even old-timers, it's other people you're going through the steps with, they will help you stop. I've had a lot of help stopping, like, Bill, shut up. It's like that kind of stuff. And I begin the process of stopping the blaming. And then the amends come along, and these people that I hate, this list, you want me to go make amends to them to rid myself of the resentment that I feel. I'm not doing that. It scares the hell out of me, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. And my friend Steve Lamb says, I know it's their money, but I've been hanging on to it for a long time. And some of them don't even know I have it. Why would I want to stir that pot, But I do it. I do it. I go out there. When you go to somebody that you don't ever want to see again, and you look them right in the eye, and you say the words that need to be said, when you turn and walk away from that experience, you are changed right then and there, no waiting. That's a cathartic experience. The action of doing that will change me and you as a person. That's how it works. The amends process is the beginning of transformation. We get transformed here. It's a very real thing. And what's the lesson in the amends process? The third pillar of spiritual condition. Nothing was ever personal. You're not buying that, are you? Because it sure seems personal, boy. It seemed like it was all very personal. We're like teenagers, aren't we? Everything's happening to me. Everybody's focused on me. When I go about the process of making the amends, it changes the story I've been telling. It changes the story. Nobody was doing anything to me. They were just doing what they do, and I happened to be in the blast radius of their behavior. And sometimes you're in the blast radius of my behavior. I'm not focused on you. You're just the next victim in line. It doesn't mean they're innocent, but the motivation we apply to this, the story that we build up around it about what's happened to us and why we're here is not true, because we apply motivation to the perpetrator that they probably don't have. When those three things come together, the powerlessness, I can't blame anymore, and nothing was personal, that's the collapse of the egoic structure of who I think I am. It begins to crumble. This is not necessarily a pleasant experience, right? Self-awareness is the fourth pillar. It's in the 10 steps. Self-awareness without humor is depression. You reach a point in this process where you stand there and you say, oh my God, it's me. It was never them. It's me. That's not a happy moment, but it's part of the process. This has to happen. It certainly happened to me on more than one occasion, 1 through 9 is about 10% of the program. It's not the work. It's the bare minimum. It's the first semester. It's Sober 101. 10, 11, and 12 is 90% of the program. That's where we live. That's where the real work is. That's where the transformation really begins to happen. Self-awareness. I developed the skill of the watcher where I can actually watch myself move through life. This is self-awareness as compared to self-obsession, which is a different animal. I can actually watch myself think. I can see what it is I do that stands in the way of my own happiness and fulfillment. I see it more clearly. Not necessarily a happy thing. But if I don't have that, self-awareness is everything. And in meditation, you can sit quietly and focus on your breath. Focus your mind on the breath. And you will notice that the egoic mind, the thinking mind, the working mind, doesn't like being in the present moment. There's nothing for it to do. There's anything wrong. It needs to be in the future and the past. Not necessarily a negative thing. It's just the way it is. It's not the enemy. We say here in AA, my head is out to get me. That's not, we make it adversarial because that's who we are. We need to kill it, crush it, stab it, burn it alive, Humility at any cost, Never talk about yourself, that whole thing. We go overboard like we do with everything else. It's part of who I am, but it's just not the essence of me. When I'm in meditation, when it wanders away, I notice that it has wandered away and I gently bring it back. This is absolute, conclusive proof experientially that I'm not my thinking mind. There seems to be, the way I describe it, whether it's accurate or not, there's another consciousness within me that can watch this other one operate. I can see it. Our book talks about pause when agitated or doubtful. Have you ever had the experience of standing in front of somebody and saying to yourself internally, am I actually going to say this to this person? Right? Sometimes the answer is yes, and you go ahead and do it and pay the price. But there's other times you say, no, I'm not. I'm done with that. Not anymore. That's self-awareness. Meditation is a really good tool to exercise and develop that skill. You exercise that muscle. You can't shut the mind off. That isn't what's going on. But you can watch it and observe it. If you don't respond to it, it has a tendency to slow down a bit. Some people come to me and they say, I can't meditate, my mind's too busy. First question I ask them is, have you made the amends? Sometimes they come back with an answer, well, I'm making living amends, which means no, I haven't made the amends. Maybe if you complete that 9th step, it'll slow down a little bit. Maybe you'll have a little bit more self-esteem. Maybe you'll get a little quieter as time goes by. None of this happens overnight. All the ego does is it takes the past and projects it into the future over and over again. It creates nothing. It just takes credit for shit, right? And you'll get a feeling. It'll create a story around it. Now you've got an emotion, and it does stuff like that. If you can observe it and watch it, it slows down. The last pillar, the 5th pillar, is a big one. It's the thing that's missing in us. The thing that's missing in emotionally immature people is compassion. And I don't know I don't have it because I've never had it. It isn't like I can see my character defects. I can see what they are. And I'm not stupid. I see what it is. I'm arrogant, I'm pompous, I'm all that stuff. But I don't know that I don't have compassion. I don't know that I can't feel you. How do we address that in this? Well, here's the work. The work in AA is working with others, helping others, sponsoring people, we call it here. That's one of the ways. It's kind of a big way, putting yourself in that position to try to guide someone through the steps like that man did for me. Give up my time. Is it inconvenient? Always. I think I need to be inconvenienced. I think I need something to interrupt what I'm going to do and do something really positive that's good for me. And over the years, I've just gotten used to it. And I love it. And what happens when we do that, the first 10 years, I want to look good. I'm looking for devotees. I'm not looking for sponsees. I want to have my own church, right? I want to look good. Remember how they say, do something good for somebody, then don't tell anybody? I'm not sure I ever accomplished that. If you don't know about it, I don't think it counts. I need the stripes, right? It didn't matter what my motivation was because I did a lot of stuff and I fell in love with you. You can't not do that. When somebody comes to you and opens their life up to you, they invite you into their life. You invite them into your life, and if they come in, it disrupts everything. Everything. You're the great disruption. You've always been the teacher. Whenever I've needed some help, he sends me you. You come into my life, and it disrupts everything. The most spiritual thing you'll hear in AA is get in the car. Just get it. And for some reason, I got in the car. It was an adventure for me, and I did it, and it changed me. And I fell in love with you. I was there when your babies were being born because I was significant in your life. When I got here, I wasn't significant in anybody's life. And all of a sudden, you can tell how spiritual you are if you're surrounded by people that love you. Sometimes that's hard to admit to. Sometimes it's hard for us to accept that. I can tell you today that I'm surrounded by people that love me. And the reason is because you made me lovable. When I got here, I wasn't like that. I was, some people remember, I was loud, I was boisterous. I'm a preacher, man, by nature, and it's all about me all the time. And you came into my life and changed all of that, where I started really caring and wondering about you and caring about you. I've got people that have been in my life for 30 plus years that are like family. We had a party at our house. We had over 200 people there. Isn't that wonderful? It makes me cry every year we do that. Look at what my life's come to. Look how many people are in my life. And when I got here, there was nobody in my life. I'll leave you with this thought. They say here you got to give it away to keep it. No. You have to give it away to even get it. That's how you get it, is by giving it away. Thank you very much.